While Salem is very well known for its witch hunts and subsequent execution of 20 people, did you realize that Connecticut had its own witch trials? And they lasted not just a year and a half, but for over half a century. I'm Dr. Daryn Reyman-Lock, and welcome to Curious People Wanted. Today, we are going to discuss the Connecticut Witch Trials, and if you stay with me to the end, I'll tell you about a recent Connecticut governmental resolution concerning witchcraft in Connecticut. During the 15th and 18th centuries, European witch trials resulted in the execution of around 60,000 people. The best-known witch trials in America were those in Salem, Massachusetts. They took place between 1692 and 1693, and 19 people hanged. One was pressed to death, and an additional 21 people died in jail. One was sentenced but reprieved, and another 15 people who fled found not guilty, pardoned, or released on bond. But Salem wasn't unique in its pursuit and persecution of witches. 45 years before Salem's trials, Connecticut began their own witch hunts. Witchcraft was a capital offense punishable by death in Connecticut in 1642. To be specific, the law stated, and I quote, "Any man or woman to be a witch, that is, hath or consulted with a familiar spirit, they shall be put to death," unquote. These early laws, called Blue Laws, were based on those of England and the Massachusetts Bay Colony and supported by the Old Testament. These laws were codified for the first time in 1650, and witchcraft remained a capital offense even after the laws were updated in 1715. In fact, it remained on the books until 1750. On May 26, 1647, the first person in the American colonies was hanged for witchcraft. Her name was Alice Young, and she was hanged in Hartford, Connecticut at the Meeting House Square, which is currently the site of the old State House. Her death was just the beginning. Between 1647 and 1697, at least 52 people were accused and tried of witchcraft throughout the state, but with epicenters of activity in Hartford and Wethersfield. Other towns were by no means exempt. Supposed witches were found in cities throughout the colony, including what we now know today as Stamford, Bridgeport, Westport, Fairfield, Farmington, New Haven, Old Saybrook, Wallingford, Stratford, and Windsor. There was even a woman accused in East Hampton, New York, during the Connecticut witch trials because that piece of land actually once belonged to the Connecticut colony. Unfortunately, we don't know exactly how many people were accused, tried, and executed since documentary evidence is problematic. Court records are incomplete, missing, have been destroyed, or extremely biased, and many of the accused were transient or poor, so they had few physical belongings to leave behind. Of the at least 52 accused, 9 women and 2 men were executed, and several people that were accused fled before they could be tried. But who were they? What did they do, and why were they accused? Life in colonial Connecticut was not an easy one. In 1637, the Pequot Wars began, and people feared the local indigenous populations. Floods had ruined crops, livestock was attacked and killed by wild animals, and there were a series of epidemics. On top of that, New England was Puritan. Puritanism was a religious reform movement that was notable for moral and religious earnestness that informed a person's whole way of life. It was marked by intensity of religious experience in particular, which created spiritual anxiety, resulting in people searching for signs of God's favor or anger, and a general acceptance that most of humanity was condemned to eternal damnation. Their belief system and lifestyle was marked by hard work, a bleak sense of outcome, and a desire for conformity. This desire was so strong that the Puritans challenged anyone who was different. Witch trials were an excuse to do just that. Many who stood accused of witchcraft defied the social norms of society in a way that created discomfort. Women who were viewed as difficult, people who were mentally ill or challenged, or anyone who was transient or poor. Couple this social anxiety with the fact that many Puritans felt their religious views were under attack because of the Hartford controversy. That in itself could be the subject of its own video, but it basically came down to the church thinking about baptizing children of non-church member, non-scandalous parents. For many, this was a blasphemous idea and challenged the prevailing Puritan belief system. In this unstable life, people needed order, so any additional things that challenged the social norms and views of the community became suspect. People who stood accused of witchcraft were thought to have made a compact with the devil, choosing not only Satan over God, but doing so in order to gain supernatural powers with which they could inflict harm on others. This was a problem for a multitude of reasons. Because of the strict Puritan views of many colonists, people who exhibited pride, greed, or lied were automatically suspect. Additionally, if one was discontent, which in the Puritan world equated to believing yourself above your own station, transient, poor, mentally ill, or handicapped, or had been accused of petty crimes previously, that also made you a possible witch because it diverged from the moral and religious rigors of accepted society. While not all witches were women, gender did play a role, as women were seen as more susceptible to sin than a man. I won't go through each and every person accused of witchcraft, but to give you an idea of those who were subject to scrutiny, in 1648, Wethersfield resident Mary Johnson became the first person in America to confess, probably under pressure, to witchcraft. She was a servant who was discontent with her position. Pregnant at the time of her conviction, she wasn't executed until her child had been born. 3 years later, the first of a series of couples stood accused of witchery. John and Joan Carrington were indicted on February 20th, 1651, and subsequently tried, found guilty, and executed 2 weeks later. They left behind 2 children, infant Rebecca and John Jr., who was just 11 years old. At their deaths, their estate totaled less than 24 pounds. In the early 1660s, several other couples were accused and tried. Among these were William and Judith Ayers, who escaped from jail and fled Connecticut, and a poor couple, Catherine and Henry Palmer, who fled to Rhode Island. Judith and Catherine were among several people named as witches by Rebecca Greensmith. And here's the twist in that story. Rebecca was described by Reverend John Whiting as lewd, ignorant, and considerably aged, and her husband, Nathaniel, was not only disliked by the community, but also had run-ins with the law. The Greensmiths ended up being accused and convicted of witchcraft and were hanged on January 20th, 1663, along with Mary Sanford, another woman accused of witchcraft by Rebecca herself. While the reasons surrounding her accusation are unclear, Goody Knapp was convicted of witchcraft in 1653. She was tried by one of Connecticut's founders, Roger Ludlow. Local legend says that on the scaffold, Knapp whispered to Ludlow that his neighbor, Mary Staples, the wife of Thomas Staples, with whom Ludlow was having a long-standing feud, was a witch. She was tried and acquitted. Lawsuits between Staples and Ludlow followed, including one for slander. Ludlow left town in 1654. Mary was indicted again for witchcraft, along with her daughter, Mary Harvey, and her granddaughter, Hannah Harvey, in 1692. In 1654, Windsor resident Lydia Gilbert supposedly bewitched a gun that misfired and killed a man during a training exercise in 1651. She was hanged. James Wakely was accused in 1662, 1665, and 1668. He fled to Rhode Island, but Wakely seems to have been a contentious personage in Wethersfield. One of the court records also tried to link him to Catherine Harrison. Catherine Harrison was a servant, but to her neighbors was difficult. After her husband died, she inherited an estate that was worth the equivalent of about $216,000 today. Her trial began in 1668, and after almost 2 years of depositions and 30 witnesses testifying against her, she was tried and sentenced to death in May. But her case was different because of John Winthrop Jr. John Winthrop Jr. became governor of Connecticut in 1657 and quickly set about trying to obtain an official charter from English King Charles II. This charter would establish Connecticut as an independent colony and give Winthrop the right to pardon offenders. Winthrop is an interesting player in the witch trials. He had a history of both skepticism and a restraint when it came to witchcraft cases, and he made efforts to avoid participating in legal battles concerning witchcraft at all. He himself was interested in alchemy, a proto-science involving a seemingly magical process of transformation, creation, or combination. And that might have made him less apt to accept diabolical magic. Harrison's trial was referred to a special session of the General Assembly. The outcome, the verdict, would be decided by Governor Winthrop Jr. and his assistants. What occurred over the course of this session resulted in major changes to Connecticut law and a set of evidentiary requirements for conviction, including at least 2 witnesses for every event, and that the burden of proof lay on the prosecution. He also tried to establish that unreliable testimony like spectral evidence is not submittable. Spectral evidence is testimony where witnesses claim that the accused appeared to them as a ghost or in a dream or vision. Winthrop overturned Harrison's conviction, and it was recommended that she leave town for her own safety. A few years later, Winthrop reprieved Elizabeth Seeger, a Hartford resident, tried for witchcraft 3 times. Connecticut eventually did see a bunch of lasts when it came to the witch trials. The last person to be hanged for witchcraft was Mary Barnes, who, along with her husband, Thomas, were among the original settlers of Farmington. The couple moved to Hartford, and on January 25, 1663, at 32 years old, Mary was hanged for witchcraft. The last witch trial in the state was for Wallingford residents Winifred Benham and her daughter Winifred Jr. in 1697. Sarah Spencer of Colchester became the last recorded person accused of witchcraft, but that wasn't until 1724, 27 years after the witch trials ended. Spencer was found innocent and awarded damages. In 2023, Connecticut adopted House Joint Resolution number 34, which exonerated all people formally convicted of witchcraft and executed and restored the reputations of all people indicted, forced to flee, banished, or acquitted with reputations destroyed or names tarnished due to the witchcraft accusations. Please like and share this video, subscribe to our channel, and feel free to comment if there's a topic you'd like me to explore more. But most importantly, remember to stay curious.